Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We got Phil Perry alongside. Free agency, well, in essence, it's kind of already begun its soft open. And throughout the weekend, we're going to continue to hear more players being released or having their contracts reworked or their contracts redone entirely, and they're not going to hit free agency. However, we got to get ready. We got to start talking about names. And most importantly, where are the Patriots' biggest positions of need? And let's prioritize what their positions of need are specific to the spots, not just say tackle. Let's go left tackle. Who can they get in here? What do they do if they don't get somebody? Who are the best names out there? So I'm going to bring in Phil Perry right now, who rides shotgun. Sometimes he gets behind the wheel and drives on his own, which he often does with his Next Patch podcast and all drafts conversations. He is very, very up to date on the prospects. He's also up to date on what the Patriots and football experts would like to see at left tackle. The reason, Phil, explain what you did on Thursday morning.
Yeah, I had a really cool opportunity to hang out with Dante Scarnecchia at his house and watch some tape and talk about offensive linemen and their arms. It seems to be all the rage right now, and I get it. I totally understand why. A lot of people have linked Will Campbell to the Patriots for a long time now, and now that we have an official combine measurement of just 32 5/8 inches for Will Campbell's arm length, now suddenly a lot of people are out on him. And so I wanted to go to the smartest offensive line mind that I could think of, and gave him a call earlier this week. We set up a time, and, you know, the way he put it to me was, hey, a picture's worth 1,000 words, so just come on over and we'll watch some of this, and I'll help you break this down. And, you know, he has said, and he's put it on the record, you know, that bleep is way overrated, and we've referenced that line here many times. Arm length is way overrated. When asked about it, I think back in 2018, he was referencing Isaiah Wynn. And the way we got into the details on it, to me, it still feels as though he feels that way. And, you know, he got more specific, Tom, just in terms of if you're doing the things you should be doing, it is overrated. If it's a problem on tape, then it could be a problem at the next level. And so I find that commentary interesting when it comes to Campbell in particular.
All right, Phil, you're going to have plenty of this on the Next Patch podcast, and we just want to kind of preview and cross-promote it. Did Dante feel comfortable talking about Will Campbell in particular on the record and saying X, Y, and Z? What can you unveil in terms of that particular player?
No, because he would tell you he's not a Will Campbell expert. But, you know, when you look at somebody who has played in the SEC and had a lot of success there and allowed very few sacks against some of the best, you know, he's spoken in the past about how much, you know, the competition that you faced at the collegiate level and the tape that you put out there against high-end competition, how much weight that should carry. And so for somebody like Campbell, and I've spoken to scouts and offensive coaches who are scouting offensive linemen very closely in this year's draft, you know, they look at Campbell as somebody who is very technically sound, who is very strong, who is an incredible athlete, and he tested as such at the combine last week. You know, you put all those things together, and I think he is somebody that is able to mitigate his length in ways that other players might not be able to. And so I feel really good about, if the Patriots take him, I feel really good about his chances of being able to play left tackle at the next level. I think he should be drafted really highly to play tackle at the next level.
How does Dante feel about the arm length measurement? Because it's a fact. It's inescapable. How does a player overcome it with other skills if he needs to? When does arm length play a huge role for a player? Because not on just the punch. You have good intel on this. The punch is people don't think about this. But go ahead with the punch intel that Dante shared, which is really important.
Yeah, and we'll have more of this on Next Pats, and I'm going to write about this as well. But I found it really interesting. If you're watching us on YouTube, you know, you see where my hands are right now. Like, if your hands are in front of your chest, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing in terms of your technique, you know, the arm length thing can be mitigated because you're able to protect that area where maybe longer arm defenders are trying to get to. And so you can whack their arms away, you can knock them down and reset more quickly than they will be able to. And so it's if you're not playing with the proper technique where the length can come into play, it's almost like a safety net of sorts, is my understanding. If your hands aren't necessarily where they're supposed to be, yeah, it's great to have 35-inch arms because then maybe you can reach under a guy and you can help push him off of you. But if you're really good, and it seems like Will Campbell's really good when it comes to keeping those hands where they're supposed to be and playing very technically sound, your margin for error may be smaller than it is compared to some guys who have longer arms than you, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. And I think the names that you could bring up when it comes to arm length at that position, these guys have proven that, you can do it with shorter arms. It used to be that 34 inches, Tom, was the cutoff. And now it's 33 because we've seen guys like, whether it's Matt Light here locally with 33 and a half, or if it's Penei Sewell, who was an all-pro tackle this year, who is 33 and a quarter. Sewell versus Will Campbell, who, some measurements had him at 32 and 7/8. Like, you're talking about 3/8 of an inch, less than a half an inch difference. To me, that's not enough. If you watch him on tape and you say that kid's a tackle and it looks like he might be able to play tackle for 10 years, 3/8 of an inch to me shouldn't be enough to move you off of that position.
And the last thing is, Phil and I talked about it, that really is kind of enlightening is, yeah, you want Trent Williams. That's ideally what you want. Trent Williams isn't in the draft. He's not in free agency, and he's not coming up. So what practical application do those shorter arms have? Okay, so as Phil explained it, you're bench pressing at the tackle position when somebody comes. You're punching with both arms, and your both arms are retaining their power because you're bent at the elbows. You lose all your power whether you are playing golf or in a fight or at a baseball batter's box. When you extend your arms, you want to have some punch still. So you're using your arms not at full length all the time. You don't put your hands way out and try and redirect somebody like a robot. You want to punch, move, punch, move, punch, move. The punch for Trent Williams can happen further because his shoulder to elbow is longer, so he can retain that. Will Campbell, it's not as long, so he's punching from closer. But most of your work done, Phil, is with bent elbows, not extended arms, correct?
Right. It's tight quarters. And so, if you want to have power, if you want to try to redirect someone off of their spot so that they can't get to the quarterback, you're using your hands in here and tight to your body. That's how you're going to generate the most power. And so when you're making initial contact with a defender, a lot of times it's, if you're measuring off of your chest, like, how far away are my hands from my chest right now? 12 inches, 15, 20. It's not 33 to 35, right? And so again, if you need to because you're scrambling or your hands are out of position for some reason, that's where length I think can really help. But if you're right here and you're a strong guy and you've got enough weight, and Will Campbell's 6'6", 320, you can anchor and then you can control your defender because of your technique. And because of the strength in your hands, and because that initial pop is going to be much tighter to you, almost like in a phone booth, as opposed to, putting your hand on top of your little brother and trying to prevent him from getting to the quarterback that way and having him just, swing his arms, underneath you. Like that's not how it works. It's right here. It's here, and you're punching to here. So you're going from 12 to 25 inches, not all the way out to 35. It's just it's relatively rare that those last 3 inches would really matter to you.
If we were redoing the 2001 draft when Matt Light was taken in the 30s in the second round by the Patriots, I wonder if he would be a top 10 pick based upon what he did. Because you're going to see, as I think Dante has pointed out to you and people's up at the top of the draft, you have quarterbacks, you have touchdown makers, and you have quarterback breakers. Generally go in that order. Touchdown makers and quarterback breakers, wide receivers, or defensive ends. So the Patriots can have a Matt Light, or they can have a prospective player who can put points on the board and be a sidecar passenger to Drake May forever and Travis Hunter, or they can have a quarterback breaker in Abdul Carter. That's presuming you see guys like Cam Ward maybe go early, or you name it, Phil. So that's really what they're going to end up with. And Patriots fans might have to start thinking about, if you don't get Hunter, if you don't get Carter, and you wind up with Campbell, is that bad? Or are you like, no, we got to trade out and get other guys? That's really interesting, isn't it?
It is, and you do have to be prepared to pick. I said this on the last Next Pats pod where we went through our 7-round mock, and Will Campbell goes to them at 4. Ideally, even for me, as somebody who is a believer in his ability to play tackle, ideally you would move back because his stock has fallen, and you trade back and you pick up an extra pick or two, and you end up drafting Will Campbell at 10 or 12. And you still have that guy that you feel really good about, and you feel good about all the off-the-field stuff, which we haven't even really talked about, but is going to matter in a big, big way to this new regime, in terms of the football character and the passion and the work ethic and the love of football. Ideally, you would do that, Tom, but I don't know if anybody's going to be willing to trade up with you from 4. You can say till you're blue in the face, well, you just trade back. You can't force a trade. You can't. So you have to be prepared to pick somebody. So if Carter and Hunter are off the board, he might be the safest somebody that's left for you.
And the Patriots are literally in a don't dick around type position, as they were last year with Drake May. I mean, I was promoting dick around because it was a different top 12 cast of characters. But this year, they're very much in don't dick around because they don't have a left tackle. I mean, they have guys at other positions that you can trot out there, like left guard. You can trot Cole Strange out there with a straight face and say, he can play this position if he's lucky enough to avoid injuries. But you don't have a left tackle. You just spent the whole year starting Vidarian Lowe 13 times. So if you don't get Ronnie Stanley or Morgan Moses, or you settle for Dan Moore from Pittsburgh, who's like the 87th ranked, on Pro Football Talk's top 100 free agents. Are you cured? Are you sealed away? Is that good? He's going to be out there for 16 games? Or if Dan Moore twists an ankle in week 2, who's your next guy up? Vidarian Lowe again? It's back to the future. So do you want to fix the position? And that's why the Patriots are in such a state as they enter free agency. Because the Patriots have certainly, go Phil.
One more thing that just popped into my head, and this is about more behind the scenes dynamics than Campbell in particular or anything Dante Scarnecchia said. Where it gets really interesting is taking that Will Campbell measurement and then asking the people in charge who's willing to stick their neck out for this guy. Because we already know, based on the criticism and the commentary since that arm measurement has come in, that there are going to be people who ridicule the pick if that's what gets made. And so if you're Elliott Wolf versus Mike Vrabel, and this is why it might be really important that it's Mike Vrabel pulling the trigger on all of these personnel decisions. And, even though Elliott Wolf is on paper the guy at the top of the personnel depth chart, if Elliott Wolf whiffs in the first round, that might be his job, and that might be his career as a lead personnel executive. Oftentimes those guys, it's just the state of things. It's the reality of it. Oftentimes those guys, whether you're a general manager, you have some other title, if you're the lead guy and you lose your job, you don't get a second crack at it the way head coaches get second cracks at being a head coach after a failure with their first stop. So Elliott Wolf might be, and I haven't talked to him. I don't know what his position is on Will Campbell. But somebody in his position might be a little bit more reluctant to take a Will Campbell because of that arm measurement thing, because the pick might get ridiculed if it doesn't work, as opposed to somebody like Mike Vrabel, who's in his first year here in New England, and he knows his job isn't at stake, right? So Mike Vrabel might be more willing to stick his neck out for somebody like that. And if he's the one in charge, maybe that makes a pick like that a little bit more likely.
On the flip side, what if you bring Abdul Carter in to a Mike Vrabel defense and he looks at me and goes, he gets swallowed up every time, or he can't generate what we're trying to have generated yet. And it becomes a process. Not to say Abdul Carter's ticketed to be a bust. You can be safe with Will Campbell. You can probably put him out there at the beginning of the season and say, he'll be fine. You can start to get immediate returns. Maybe Travis Hunter too. Is he a precise route runner that Josh McDaniels is looking for? Is his timing on option routes, if they become a staple of this offense, good? Or does Josh say, we're going to run it the way Drake and Travis Hunter and the rest of this offense are going to really flourish? And they start to tailor it to those players. It has probably somewhere in the middle. But Will Campbell might be the safest pick. So Elliot Wolf can look at it and go, yeah, he's got short arms, but he's not going to get disgraced on a regular basis. He knows where to be. He's got a great work ethic. He's going to be a great leader. He's going to be dependable. He's not going to kick rocks if he's not out there or getting the ball or getting to the quarterback. So we'll take Will Campbell. That's safe. So it can go both ways there, Philly.
It could. I just would say, like, the public perception is something else, right? And so if you go chalk and it doesn't work out, at least you could look back on it and say, well, what did you want me to do? I mean, that was the obvious pick at that point in time. I had to make that choice. Whereas if you go a little bit off the board, which I think Will Campbell is starting to become a little bit of an off the board kind of pick at 4, and then it doesn't work out, well, then everybody can look back and say, even I knew Will Campbell couldn't play tackle because look at his arms. And that's where you get into trouble. And that's where I think guys start to consider their job security. And boy, if the owner sees that I took a tackle at 32 and 5/8 inch arm length and it didn't work out, I mean, I'm going to get blown out for that. So, like, how secure are you in your gig? And again, this might not be all that applicable, Tom, because I think we both believe whoever Mike Vrabel wants with that first pick is the guy they're going to be taking. It's not going to be Elliot Wolf overruling him and sticking his belly up against Mike Vrabel's belly in the draft room and saying, we can't take this kid because of his arms. I'm sorry. If that's what Mike Vrabel wants. Like, I think he's going to get what he wants, don't you?
Yes, I do. But if it's reluctant agreement and kind of, I see what you're saying, Mike. No, you're right. I mean, I love the other guys. I really do. But I see what you're saying.
And he is the one technically with final say. Like, would he ever pull that card? I don't think he would.
No, I don't think he would ever pull
Mike,
that card.
It's in my contract. I get to make the pick here.
He would never pull that card, but it does go to the Machiavellian stuff I've been talking about for years. If Elliott's not on board and he thinks, well, it's my ass now, we're taking Alligator Arms Campbell over here, and I didn't love it, and maybe I could just stand over here looking forlorn by the coffee machine. What's the matter, Elliott? We just got Will Campbell. I know. I just, some of that research that I sent you guys, Robert, I don't know. He's a good kid. We'll see how it goes.
I can't get out of my head.
Oh, Carter just went, well, there goes Abdul. Oh, there goes Travis. Boy, he's going to be something to watch. Anyway, I better get back to it.
There's a great video a few years ago, and I can't remember who the pick was, but it's from the Eagles draft room, and Howie Roseman makes a pick, and he's running around the room, and he's fired up, and he's high-fiving everybody, and he goes over to whatever, I think it was the position coach or the guy they just drafted, and he goes over to him, and he's like, and the guy's just sitting there with his arms crossed, like, and it's all on video. It's all on video. It's out there. And he's clearly pissed. He's like, I just want the world to know I'm out on this guy. I don't care. I didn't want him. And I want everybody to know that. And how he,
Was that a first rounder?
No, I don't think it. I think it was more of like a middle round pick, but I'll have to try to find it now because I can see it in my mind's eye. I'm sure if we called up Robbie Buckets, he would have that right off the tip of his tongue.
Oh, big Eagles fan. Not a lamppost scaler though. All right. Patriots, they want to try and solve every need in free agency so they don't have to sit there on draft day and say, we got to take Will Campbell. They get Ronnie Stanley, we can stop all our little arm Will Campbell conversation. And I kind of like the Will Campbell thing. I just keep it simple this time around. But it's wild that as free agency approaches, Phil, there's not a single Patriot on any list of any top 100 sleepers, nobody. You can't find a single Patriots player who is in a contract year that anybody in the league wants, which is testimony to what they're dealing with right now. This is a roster that, much less the top 100 players, that they're not going to have anybody in. Maybe Drake May sneaks in. They don't have anybody who anybody wants either. Okay. So all that stated, we all know what the situation is. Let's get right after it. Ranking the Patriots' needs, Phil. Let's start with starting left tackle. Agree?
Agreed. That is number one with a bullet to me.
Literally ain't got one and haven't had one. Didn't have one when Trent Brown was here, not behaving himself. Number two, lead wide receiver. I'm not going to call it a number one. I'm going to say a lead wide receiver because on your roster right now, you have Demario Douglas, who's probably your most relied upon. Then you have Kendrick Bourne, who could parade around perhaps as a guy you could target 6 times in a game. Kayshon Boutte is also a guy you could target 6 times in a game. Those are your 3 main ones. I still think Demario Douglas warrants the ball 6 to 10 times a game on a regular basis, at least those looks and targets. But you have to have somebody better than Bourne and Henry as your top pass catchers. Bourne and Boutte. And Hunter Henry also is not a wide receiver, but that's it. Your best wideouts are a slot who weighs 180 soaking wet, and a tight end. Agree then lead wide receiver is number 2?
I would have it that way too, yes.
All right. Now it's interesting. I wonder what you're going to think here. Defensive end / edge I have as my number 3.
Agreed.
That's manned by Keon White and Dietrich Wise, really, at this point.
And even Dietrich Wise is a free agent, so you don't know if he's going to be back.
Okay. So you have Keon White, your only edge guy. Good player. Could be a little temperamental. We don't know. Next up, defensive tackle is my next need, Phil. I'm going to put that ahead of right tackle. Put it ahead of right tackle. Godshaw's looking for a trade or has permission to seek one. After that, you have a terrific player in Christian Barmore, who you don't know what health-wise you can expect necessarily. So you have to always plan for the worst, not health-wise, but availability-wise. Then you have Daniel Aquale, who made 16 starts for the Patriots, and Jeremiah Farms. Phil, anybody I'm missing there at your defensive tackle position?
I think you hit on them. I would have right tackle higher than this one, but I agree with you that this is also a need. And I would put this one very closely to, and I don't know where you have this next position, but I would put it very closely to second corner. Second corner opposite Christian Gonzalez.
I don't have that as high. Yeah, second corner is high for me. I just think you can get by with a capable one. I think at the edge, because of what we saw, for instance, against teams like the Chargers, where you're standing, feet planted, as Justin Herbert was, surveying, pointing out a friend of yours from college in the stands up there, and then returning to survey. That's not what you're looking for. So I do have defensive end and defensive tackle ahead of second corner. I also have right tackle, Phil.
Yeah.
They need to hope like hell that Caden Wallace comes around and can contribute, correct?
Yes, no question. I mean, you hope like hell, but I'm not even sure I would bank on that happening. I would be all for them signing a Morgan Moses type, some sort of veteran that you feel like can give you respectable play there. And then if it works out for Caden Wallace, great. I just don't think he's shown enough to hand him the starting gig. So you got to start at left tackle, but I'd be looking at right tackles very early in free agency as well.
Next, I have starting left guard. You're going to presume that Strange is nearing the end, and you have to kind of look in whether or not Layden Robinson can make the flip. He's been more of a right guard, so you have to hope that Layden Robinson can do that. He made 1 start at left guard last year. So you got nothing at left tackle. You really don't have a lead wide receiver. You have 1 defensive end. And no depth behind it, no pass rush specialist. Defensive tackle, your 2 best are either on the way out of town in Godshaw or a question mark in Barmore. Right tackle, you are hoping a 3rd round pick comes around. And then starting left guard, you can get by with what you have on the roster, but you want to bump it up. And then Phil, as we pointed out, second corner, which I think is a great spot to look at. It's a sneaky spot, but there's so many more that are more desperate. So we good?
Good. I'm good.
Let's go. Starting left tackle. These are the position-by-position answers that exist out there. Starting left tackle, you got Ronnie Stanley of the Ravens, Cam Robinson, late of the Vikings, Dan Moore from Pittsburgh, and Morgan Moses from the Jets. Which one of those? So Moses more right tackle, you say?
Yeah. I think you'd be trying him at right tackle, but to me, it's Ronnie Stanley, clear cut, number 1 option there. The other 2 guys that you mentioned, from people that I've spoken to, really aren't close to Ronnie Stanley's ability level. So he's so close to free agency now. I know there's been a lot of grumblings about how he's going to re-sign with Baltimore. But if you're New England, you got to do whatever you can to make it very clear to him and his agent, if you haven't already. Like, you could have been able to do this at the Combine, and my guess is they did. Made it very clear to them that you're willing to bowl him over financially to pry him from Baltimore. Because if you don't, maybe Cam Robinson gives you at least sort of a Band-Aid level player at that position. But I think if you don't get Ronnie Stanley, you're almost backing yourselves into a corner to take a left tackle and take one really early in the draft, which is not where you want to be.
Yep. One car on the lot, as Mike Vrabel alluded to, and he is the car that you might have to overpay for. Also, Cam Robinson, I look at his situation coming from Minnesota, got traded from Jacksonville to Minnesota. If he's got an opportunity in Minnesota to stay there and the money's comparable, might want to stay. I don't know. I can't get in his mind, but it is interesting to think about the relative performance level of the two teams, and you got to pay the suck tax. Next up, lead wide out. Here's your options. First up, Chris Godwin signing. Get him. Can't do that? Well, try and overpay for Devontae Adams. Can't do it? Shit. All right. Can we make a deal for DK Metcalf? No. Well, Christian Kirk's out there, the free agent. Darius Slayton's out there and a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins is out there and a free agent. Tyler Lockett, who I recommended the Patriots draft so many years ago, is out there. You can trade for Cooper Kupp unless he gets released. I don't know if they have to do that. Or you can explore what I like is a Jacoby Myers deal. Bring him on back to town. Also, as Mike Florio wrote, and this is interesting, T. Higgins, if he's franchised, you can still have him in for a visit. You can still bring him in. You're probably not going to do the 2 first-round picks and agree to a $35 million deal. But you could have him in for a visit and then try and convince him that, hey, if we trade for you, would you want to come here? Although I wouldn't give up the 1 overall for him, the number 4 pick for him, would you?
It's a really, really hard thing for me to envision them being willing to give up. Now, if you do that kind of deal after the draft, I guess it makes it a little bit more palatable. But unless you're a contending playoff team on an annual basis, and even then, it's just really hard for me to give up 2 first-round picks, even if they're in the 20s. And I don't think they're going to be that low this coming year. So that's a hard one for me. I'm with you. Godwin has got to be first on the list. He's 29. I know he's coming off of injury, but he's a really good player. He was maybe going to be he was on pace to have one of the best years of his career last year at 28 years old before getting hurt. So that would be the option for me. You keep all your picks, and it's just money, and you've got plenty of it. That's the guy I'd be going after.
All right, we can go through all the other ones. I'm sure we will on early edition time and time again. Tyler Lockett's probably going to want to stay on the West Coast, might go to the Raiders with Pete, which could open up an opportunity for a Jacoby Myers deal. Again, that's me just spitballing on Jacoby Myers. I should say that because sometimes people go, where are you getting this shit on Devontae Adams for 2 and 64? That source sucks. Like me, I pulled it out of my head. So... not my responsibility to be accurate over here. I'm just
Who's your source? I'm the source.
What do you think? I'm the source, goddammit. It's March. Christ. What do you call an agent? Think I'm going to get better information from them? You suckers. You suckers. Oh, talk to an agent. Yeah. Now you're in cahoots. All right, next up, Edge, Phil. Josh Sweat, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Chase Young, Deo Odeyingbo, Patrick Jones, Dante Fowler, Malcolm Kuntz, and Matthew Judon. Malcolm Kuntz is a player that is an under-the-radar candidate. He got hurt early in the year. Could be the kind of stout edge player that would be really intriguing for the Patriots to have. Bill, the floor is yours. Josh Sweat, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Chase Young.
I think if I'm the Patriots, I'm out on all those guys, unfortunately for them. For me, if I'm New England, I'm looking for cornerstone pieces. And those guys that you mentioned, some of them are really talented and some of them still have plenty of juice. Some of them have dealt with some injury. Some are closer to the end than the beginning. They feel like, to me, that tier of player of those well-known names, whether it's Sweat, Chase Young, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. I would throw DeMarcus Lawrence in there from the Cowboys. Like, Those guys are really accomplished. They're really accomplished, Tom, but they feel like finishing pieces for a contending team. Like, we're in our window. We need a little juice on the edge. Let's go and get this guy and see if we can squeeze every last drop of him before he goes and rides off into the sunset and retires. That's not where the Patriots are.
They're building situation. They're foundational. So that's why a guy I like, he's not really an edge player, he's a linebacker. Anthony Jennings, to me, is a foundational kind of player. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about mid-range, talented players who give you productive plays, seem to be in the right place at the right time, and seem to be good shits. The team needs way more Anthony Jennings as is.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, he's a very good run stuffing player on the edge. And so as a quote unquote starter on the edge for you, that's a pretty good deal right there that you got in Anthony Jennings. Now, you want a little more explosiveness, and I get that. And I think Kuntz can give that to you. I've talked to people, evaluators who really like him, and have said, after that top tier of pass rushers, like, he's probably the best one. And so if you've got it in your mind that you're going to be more of a middle tier player in free agency as the Patriots, like, that would be a really solid option. Darrell Taylor is another one I've mentioned on the Next Pats podcast that I've talked to people who have some love for him. He's 6'4", 255, really like a 3-down player. He was a prototypical Patriot back in the day coming out of Tennessee a few years ago. That's somebody I could see them being in on. How about this, though? Just as a splashy, sexy, pie-in-the-sky sort of idea. Because the draft is what it is, and because I think you're pretty much, if you're not drafting Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, I think you're going to be reaching for just about anybody at 4. Would you trade the 4th pick for Micah Parsons?
Yes.
Okay. Because I like the idea of that. That is a cornerstone piece. That's somebody who's still firmly in his prime, got a lot of life left in those legs, and he is a game wrecker. And so if you bypass the opportunity to draft a tackle or a pass catcher at 4 because you don't think there's going to be one there that is worthy of that spot, could you move the pick, give a call to the Jones family and say, hey, you're going to get a top 5 pick. We know you can't pay this guy. You've got a lot of other people there you need to pay. Like, let's figure this out. If you could get Micah Parsons up here, that to me would be a home run sort of situation. But I'll acknowledge, highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely, and we will also acknowledge that throughout, folks. Again, a lot of this disclaimer, I should attach a disclaimer. All of this is spitballing unless otherwise presented as I'm hearing or my understanding is. When you hear those words, I'm hearing and my understanding is, perk up. Otherwise, you just got 2 guys just gassing. Not necessarily. Phil went to see Dante today. He's not just gassing. He knows what the hell's going on. And I got some ideas too. But just looking at Malcolm Kuntz, just wanted to see like his situation here.
Did you find the video of Josh McDaniels screaming at him in the middle of a practice because he got too close to Derek Carr a few years ago? That's a good one.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I Googled him, and the most recent ones, it's like 5 different teams. The pros and cons of the Packers, the pros and cons of the Falcons, the pros and cons of every team. Tennessee signing Malcolm Kuntz, 6'2", 250-pound power playing edge. But he's going to be sought after, despite missing virtually the entire season. You're going to have to pay for a guy like Malcolm Kuntz.
And Tom, my understanding is there's some love for Malcolm. There's some love for Malcolm Kuntz in the building. Let's just put it that way. Again, but a middle tier guy. It's not going to make or break your offseason.
Those 3 words, also in the building. My understanding is, I've been hearing anytime hearing is used, and in the building. Those are good ones. Let's move over to guard now. Will Freeze, Mekhi Becton, Jimmy Daniels from the Steelers, and also Kevin Zeitler. I mean, I don't know. What are you going to do there? Might grab him. I think there's a kid named Ben Berenson, too. Like the 88th best free agent on Florio's thing. Might be great. Might come out and, play fine. It's like a 7th-round pick, I think. No, Will Freeze was a 7th-round pick.
And Will Freeze is a pretty good player.
Great for the Colts.
He's a pretty good player. He's dealt with some injury. I just wonder if you could maybe trade for a guy like Joe Thuney. Oh, wait. Oh, can't do that. Already been traded.
Asleep
He's
with
off
the
to
switch,
Chicago.
Phil? Talk on it.
Would you not have been in on him for that? It sounds like our buddy Albert Breer was reporting at Boston Sports Tonight earlier this week that the Patriots were interested. They were talking trade, potentially, with the Chiefs to bring Joe Thuney back to New England, but they weren't willing to go as far as the Bears went. And I listen to that and I say, the Bears didn't go all that far. It's a 4th-round pick next year. It's a day 3 choice for a guy that's a really good player. And yeah, you're trading for the contract too, but goodness gracious, like you couldn't use that guy?
Pick this year. It's a 5th-round pick this year.
It's the equivalent of a 5th-round pick this year in terms of value. That's how the league would look at it. Yeah. So
for a guy who got an MVP vote this year, he got an MVP vote. Now he got it from Tom Brady, but I looked at Brady's ballot. It was pretty much legit. So, yeah, I mean, what are they doing down there? Okay, next up. Defensive tackle. Watch this, folks. I'm not going to call him Milton Jenkins. I'm not going to call him Milton Wallace. I'm going to get it right because he's coming to town. It's Milton Williams from the Eagles. Phil?
I thought you were going to go with a Milton Berle there. Milton Williams.
Uncle Milty.
Milton Williams, Tom. Let's bring it full circle now. I texted Rob Snyder as we're sitting here talking. Robbie Buckets, a.k.a. Robbie Buckets, producer extraordinaire here at NBC Sports Boston, big Eagles fan. I texted him, who was the Eagles draft pick that one assistant hated a few years ago, and he's on camera leaving Howie hanging as Howie is celebrating in the draft room. And he goes, that was Milton Williams! Exclamation point. And the guy, Tom Donahoe, who is a NFL executive, longtime football exec.
Oh, my God, Tom Donahoe. Tom Donahoe was...
Donahue, maybe.
No, it's Donahoe.
It's
he was
Donahoe.
going to be your GM back in 2001. He was going to be, when the Patriots were shopping to get Tom Donahoe in here from the Steelers. He ended up going to Buffalo because Bill Belichick, you might remember, was hired instead. And he ended up going to the Bills and traded for Bledsoe a couple of years later. And it was still in that area in 2003 when they traded for Bledsoe. Tom Donahoe's kind of swaggering around going, I got over on them. So those are good times.
Well, he apparently wanted Aleem McNeil, who also ended up being a pretty good player. So he might have been proven correct just as much as Howie Roseman was. But yeah, Milton Williams, you interested in that? A little bit smaller guy, but apparently if Vrabel's going to want more of a penetrating defense, I could see them going after him and trying to wreak some havoc from the interior.
If you don't have Godshaw and Christian Barmore is limited or in a situation where you're concerned that you might have not him. If you're concerned about not having about his availability, then yeah, you got to go and get somebody immediately. So Uncle Milty has to get in here and start playing some good football. Line him up next to Daniel Aquale and Keon White and Penny Jennings, and bring Dietrich Wise back, and there's your 5. I mean, it's not like the Purple People Eaters, Steel Curtain, but you got to do something, right, Phil?
Certainly not. Did you throw Malcolm Kuntz in that mix as well? I don't know. Maybe you get a little bit more explosiveness off the edge.
I mean, you get your Mal and your Milt. If you get Mal and Milt, you've kind of showed up the front. But again, you're signing somebody who missed the whole friggin' year to probably a fat contract in Malcolm Kuntz. I mean, poor Vrabel down there. He's relying on guys, and Christian Barmore. It's like last year in some ways with Elliott Wolf saying, well, hopefully Chukes Okorafor could flip to the other side, and maybe Caden Wallace could flip to the other side. And yeah, no, we have NFL players.
Malcolm Kuntz played 17 games last year. 8 sacks in 17 games. So he's not your problem.
No, Kuntz was hurt.
Football Reference. Oh, jeepers creepers.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm wrong. You're right. I'm wrong.
Usually it's me with bad intel.
He was hurt. I'm looking at Football Reference, and I'm like, 2023 was last year, right? Is it 2023 last year?
Malcolm Kuntz didn't play.
2023. That's a year ago. No, it's actually 2 years ago. I'm still getting used to that.
How can you guys know Malcolm Kuntz was injured all year? I mean, everyone knows that.
My Atlanta. Anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. That's
So
where they
you
are.
get Mal and
That's where
Milt.
they are. Mal and Milt. Hey, your pass rush is a little better. I don't know if you're any better on first and second down, but you're certainly better on third down.
Malcolm, Milton, Morgan, and Moore.
Who's Morgan?
Dan Moore. Moses.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. How could I forget? Yeah.
Also, and Cooper Cup.
The four M's. The four M's, and Tom wants Cooper Cup. Yeah. I could see that.
Right. Then you don't even really have to show up to the draft. You're all set. Championship.
Just do whatever you want in the draft. That's the goal, right? I don't think it's realistic either. I know I feel the way you do, which is if their goal is to fill every need before they get to the draft. I mean, I guess, Tom, you could, not every need, not all the ones we've laid out, but there is a path to them having Ronnie Stanley, Chris Godwin, and call it Malcolm Kuntz before they get to the draft. I mean, they are kind of freed up at that point. Like, you don't have to force a defensive tackle at 4 or even at 38 just because you haven't signed a great player there, do you?
Yeah. No, I don't think you have to, force Mason Graham necessarily at 4.
Yeah.
You got Malcolm Kuntz. You don't have to force. You certainly don't have to force Will Campbell. With Travis Hunter sitting there, you might say, "My God, we have Chris Godwin and Travis Hunter here. Let's do that." And we can slip him over to play 2 corner. No, he's not going to play 2 corner. He's not going to. I mean, that's the thing is the meetings. If Travis Hunter can walk in and play offense and corner and not show up at all the meetings, guys will go, how come these meetings, do they matter?
Yeah, if you're Vrabel, then you say, yeah, next time you win a Heisman playing 2 different positions, you can ask that question. Otherwise, you just sit your ass down and you listen to me.
Good point. But no, you make a good point. I mean, there are pathways for the Patriots to feel less desperate on draft day. But if there's no Ronnie Stanley, really, honestly, if you don't get Ronnie Stanley, it can really screw up everything. Because then you almost have to go Will Campbell or someone. Although I am intrigued by, and as the draft goes along, I want you to plumb deeper on Josh Simmons from Ohio State, Phil. Okay, injured last year, patella tendon.
We could dig into it.
But he would have been the top-rated tackle in the draft had he not had that injury.
Yeah,
so you might have a Gronk situation there.
You might, and maybe the same was true of Gronk when he was coming out. Although we found out, in terms of his football mind, he was pretty damn smart. It does sound like there are some, and you hate doing this pre-draft, but there's just rumblings about football character with Josh Simmons, and I don't know what even specifically that would be about. But that's something that we'll dig into too. Is that the kind of statement you want to make? If you do feel that way about him, maybe they don't. But if you do feel that way about him, even if he looks like a really good left tackle, are you comfortable with that as your first pick, new regime, new era, this is who we are kind of situation?
Yeah. And honestly, too, you mentioned Micah Parsons. Do you want Micah Parsons? Is it Josh Williams or Josh Simmons? Which one did I say? Jeez,
Josh Simmons. You said Simmons. You said Josh Simmons. You're
all
good.
right, well, I googled Williams.
Who's Josh Williams?
I don't know. He interviewed for the friggin' Jaguars GM job.
Is that the guy that Pedro hit and started a brawl back in the mid '90s? Remember that? That was Gerald Williams.
Don Zimmer.
No, it's Gerald Williams. Remember Gerald Williams? I think he's an outfielder for the Rays. Jacked guy.
Yep.
Very even like a stiff swing. Like he was almost too muscle bound.
Very rigid.
Yeah. Rigid.
Sneaky fact about Phil. He loves breaking down baseball swings.
Love it.
Loves it.
I love it. I love it.
We've
much of my Instagram reels is baseball swings and coaches talking about the baseball swing. Sometimes it's coaches arguing about the baseball swing.
The amount of time I spend watching people fall off their front stairs on Ring doorbell cams and guys refusing to give their IDs to cops and saying, I don't have to do that. The amount of time I spend watching those in my chair while zinning and before I go to bed is absurd.
Those are the ones I have seen. I know what you're talking about. Or the the police stops, those are very stressful for me. So I try not to linger on those too long if they do come across the old timeline. I get back to baseball.
It's insane. Yeah. No, and mine is that, golf swings, and basketball. Is this a travel? Yes, it's always a travel.
That's a rough one. I don't know why you would subject yourself to that.
It's unbelievable. Yo, my man.
It's just so you can. It's just so you can. The next time you're playing at the rack, you can feel comfortable when you're calling somebody else out for traveling. Is that what it is?
I'm not going to call it travel, and I don't call palming and turn the ball over. I do just say to kids when they grotesquely palm, I go, game's way easier when you can carry it like that, I guess, huh?
Just the passive aggressive shot mid-game?
Well, when you can come to a full stop, hesitate, put your hand under the ball completely, and then restart. I'm like, wow, game must be way easier like that, huh? I should start trying that.
It's like the And One mixtape tour. My godson, the professor. Remember those guys?
When is this old guy leaving? He's still here. That's what they're saying down there at the rack.
I'm sure.
All right. Poor Adam Jay-Z has to watch this whole friggin' thing and then edit it.
Thanks,
Make sure
Adam.
you take out all those Phileas interruptionists early when Phil starts rolling downhill. And I try to get an edge for it. All right. Have a great day.
Okay. You too. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Can't imagine many people made it this far. If you did, tell us in the comments.
Love you.
Really, we do.